One world religion. Does the Bible actually teach that there will be a time when the whole world will have one religion? No, it doesn't. It teaches a time when all people will come under one religious, economic, political authority. That's explained in chapter 13 of the book of Revelation. It's the idea that everyone will be required to submit to the beast and receive his mark. Submitting to the beast means worshiping the beast. Receiving his mark allows you economic freedom. So it's both temporal and spiritual. And for that reason, many Bible teachers and pastors teach this idea of a one-world religion, that everybody on earth will eventually come under one religious belief, one system, one set of doctrines, one idea of God. But that's not actually taught in the Scripture. In fact, that whole idea leads to all kinds of problems. And many people say, well, that'll never happen because the Muslims are never going to submit to Catholicism. Catholicism is never going to submit to Islam. Islam is never going to submit to Hinduism. Hinduism is never going to submit to Christianity, and that sort of thing. And so it makes this idea of this one world religion rising up a near impossibility. In fact, you won't even find the phrase one world religion in the Bible. Yet there is an idea taught in the Bible of everyone on earth coming together under this one central authority called the beast. And I think the best understanding we can arrive at may be had by looking at the one world religion of Caesarean Rome. This is fascinating because pagan Rome had a one world religion. That is, everyone within the empire was part of a one world religion. That one world religion was founded on something called the Pantheon. Nobody even knows how many gods were in the Pantheon. But as the Roman armies conquered country after country, they would first learn the religion of that particular country. They would develop an understanding for the people's beliefs, and they would not insist that they abandon those beliefs and worship some existing god in the Pantheon, but rather they would assimilate new gods into the Pantheon. And the Pantheon grew and grew. But there was one essential tenet that was required. A conquered country and its people were required to submit to the Caesar. Caesar was the God-man. He claimed to be divine, and Caesar was the ultimate authority on earth, both temporal and spiritual. So as long as you agreed to submit to the Caesar in that way, your God could be installed into the Pantheon, and you were free to worship your God in whatever way you had been. But it was about authority and submission to Caesar, the God-man. And so, throughout the entire Roman Empire, every religion, every god was accepted. Didn't matter whether you were a Celt practicing human sacrifice, that was okay, or you were a Hun, or a Vandal, or a Hindu. They didn't care. Every god and every system became part of the Pantheon. And so you worshipped your God, but first submitted to Caesar, the God-man. The problem arose when Christ came, died on the cross, and rose again. The true Christians would not accept Caesar's terms. The Jews had accepted Caesar's terms. They submitted to Caesar first, albeit fingers crossed behind their backs, yet they did. And when the time came to crucify Jesus, they said, "Kill him. We have no king but Caesar." That's what they said. They submitted to Caesar. And Jesus said of the Jews, "Ye are of your father, the devil." So that all makes sense. It was easy for them to submit to Caesar. But let's return to this idea of one world religion. The Roman Caesars understood the power of letting every country, every nation, have its gods, its God, its religion, whatever, only under the terms of submission to Caesar, the God-man. That is the only way a one-world religion will work. You must allow people to have their idiosyncrasies, their religious proclivities. And there were many cults throughout the Roman Empire, and Rome tolerated them. It had no problem with them. And so that's the model we have historically of a one-world religion. A one-world religion is not a uniform religious structure, but it is an all-encompassing pantheon, and all people submit first to the God-man. So for those of us who are born-again Christians, we acknowledge only one God-man. That is Jesus Christ, and there is no other. He alone is the mediator between man and God, and Caesar cannot be that mediator. For that reason, the early Christians were forced into the catacombs. They were murdered. They were sacrificed. They were crucified. They were thrown to the lions. They were slashed to pieces by the Roman gladiators. They were impaled on stakes in Nero's garden, soaked in oil, and lit as torches to illuminate his garden. Now, it wasn't until Constantine, in the early 4th century, made Christianity legal and said you can come out from the catacombs. You can practice your religion in the open without any repercussions, and you don't have to submit first to the Caesar. And that changed everything. But he was attempting to consolidate all the pagan religions, the entire pantheon, and Christianity under one banner. That was his purpose, and he felt that would unify the empire. But in fact, that was the demise of Caesarean Rome, because pagan Rome was founded on several principles. Its strength was in its one-world religion, allowing the nations it conquered to practice their religion by submission first to the Caesar. When Christianity was allowed to run free to a certain degree, there was no longer a need for the Caesar, the God-man, to exist. There can only be one God-man, and that became Jesus Christ, who sits at the right hand of God as we speak. And so the Caesarean Rome of the pagans began to crumble, and that's why. If we look at today's idea of a one-world religion, if we think for a moment that everybody on earth is going to come together and practice the same religious discipline, follow the same rules, believe the same doctrines, worship the same God, that's not going to happen. Pagan Rome knew that. And so a better model and better understanding of the coming one-world religion is that everyone will practice their own system of religion. It will be like the Pantheon, but they will submit first to the beast. Doesn't matter whether you're an evangelical or a Hindu or a Buddhist or Muslim, you can practice your religion in whatever way you want, but you must submit to that beast, that God-man. And here's the most fascinating thing I find about this whole scenario. When pagan Rome, the Rome of the Caesars, crumbled, it was gradually replaced by something called the Holy Roman Empire. And it was the popes that rose up and took the place of the Caesars. And the popes took on all the titles of the Caesars, of the pagan Caesars. And they amalgamated that with some idea of Christianity. And they established themselves as God on earth. They took all the titles of the Caesars unto themselves, and they took all the titles of Christ unto themselves. So what we really have is a changing of the guard. Caesarean Rome, that very model, was simply replaced by a papal model. And we see that happening very soon after the popes began to rise. They started building a new pantheon. They called them saints. And you could pray to saints. And every pope became a saint and was installed in heaven. And you could pray to your favorite pope. And Mary was elevated. And so this new pantheon was created. Same principle. Caesarean pagan Rome established a workable model. The papal system did exactly the same thing. All they did was change the names. The one world religion that is coming will not be a specific religion. In fact, in Revelation chapter 13, the authorized 1611 King James Bible says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." And the word causeth is really important, because what you find in the modern Bible translations more often is the word forces. To cause something is not the same as to force it. And cause is the correct word, because Satan does not want to force you to worship him. He wants you to choose him of your own free will. So the beast, the Antichrist, causes people to worship him. He doesn't force them. There will be no compulsion, but there will be circumstances created that cause people to worship this beast. And papal Rome, the popes of Rome, they don't call it worship. They call it venerate. But it's the same thing. All the characteristics of worshiping God are contained in veneration. Praying to dead saints, praying to your favorite dead pope, praying to Mary, praying to angels. That's worship. They don't call it worship in the Roman Catholic Church. They call it venerate. Again, this is all part of that system of deception. The word means exactly the same thing in practice. One world religion will not require you to abandon your Hinduism. One world religion will not require you to abandon your evangelicalism. It will not require you to abandon Islam. All it will require is that you submit to that central authority and you receive this mark so you can carry on economically. That's the one world religion. It is a new pantheon. So let us remember, the one world religion idea taught by most pastors and Bible teachers today is not biblical. It's something they've created out of their imaginations. The idea that everybody would be forced to worship the same God and in the same way, that's not going to happen. And that's not what the devil wants. He wants you to worship him by your own free will. And the reason he wants that, and the Bible teaches that, is because that's what God does. God does not force you to worship him. You have a choice. You can choose him or reject him. And because Lucifer said, "I will be like the Most High," he wants to emulate God on every level. And forcing people to worship him wouldn't really count, would it? And so that's why the word causeth to worship him, causeth to take the mark, is used in the authorized 1611. That's the correct word. That's the correct doctrine. That's the correct understanding. If I force you to abandon your religion and adopt my religion, then that's force, and it doesn't count. Forced conversion is not the objective of Satan. So let us understand, one world religion is by submission to a God-man. The only God-man on earth right now is the Pope of Rome. And that office and that presumed authority was established perhaps in the 9th century. By then, the popes had taken on every title of Jesus Christ, and they had taken on every title of the Roman Caesars. They in fact installed themselves in exactly the same position as the Roman Caesars. And their objective is not to change every religion, but to bring it back under their central authority, just as the Roman Caesars did. That's what we need to look for. Who is your authority on earth? Who do you first submit to? If your bank account, your money, your wealth, everything that sustains you in this physical realm is threatened, will you submit to this Antichrist, this beast? Will you say, yes, I'll take that mark, cross my fingers behind my back, and submit to this central ecclesial and temporal power called Antichrist? Will you do that? Or will you give up everything and put your life on the line? That's what the early Christians did. They would not become part of Caesar's one world Pantheon religion. They would not allow Caesar to install Christ into the Roman Pantheon. So whether you cross your fingers behind your back and pretend to submit so you can keep your wealth, it doesn't matter. Once you've done that, you've accepted the mark, and you're eternally damned. It's all or nothing. One world religion allows you to keep your religion, but you must have the Antichrist God-man, the substitute for Christ in place of Christ. Thank you for listening.